I disguised myself as a man and served as a soldier in the barracks for 12 years. Suddenly, I learned that I was the real daughter of the governor. The fake daughter sobbed and grabbed my sleeve and shook me. "Sister, I know I am the magpie in the magpie's nest. I just ask you not to take away the love my parents and brothers have for me." She doesn't know that I don't want to steal her love at all. I just want to get some food for my brothers.
1.
When the news that the governor was looking for me reached the barracks, my brothers were all very nervous. They asked me, "Motu, what trouble did you get into? Why did you end up in the hands of the governor?" As a result, as soon as I was let in, before I had time to greet, a lady in gorgeous clothes rushed over, grabbed me, and looked me around. The features and eyebrows are exactly the same as mine when I was young. "Nan, mother never thought that she would find you in this life." Seeing that the lady was about to cry, behind her, the governor Zhao, who was dressed in official robes, was relatively less excited. In other words, he might have been excited at first, but when he saw me in person, his excitement immediately turned into deep disappointment. "My daughter, Zhao Dongji, has become like this. It is a disgrace to our Zhao family. It is a disgrace to the family." I looked at myself. An old suit of armor, although it is often washed, there are still blood and oil stains in the seams that cannot be washed away, making it look dirty. I just had a battle with bandits last night, so my face is bruised. There's a panda-like black bruise on my left eye and a long blood stain on the right side of my cheek, like a stray dog crawling around. Opposite me, there was a girl who was in stark contrast to me. She was wearing a goose-yellow skirt and coat. Her skin was fair, her waist was slender like a willow swaying in the wind, and she looked like a delicate and gentle lady from an aristocratic family. At this moment, she was huddled behind a young man, her misty eyes filled with tears. She looked like she wanted to look at me but was afraid, which made her look particularly pitiful. Sure enough, the young man protected the delicate girl and looked at Governor Zhao. "Father, Qingqing is the daughter you and mother raised, and she is also a lady who inherited the Zhao family tradition." When he said this, Mrs. Zhao, who was originally hugging me and crying, seemed to be reminded. She immediately let go of me and stepped forward to hug the delicate girl's shoulders. "Qingqing, don't be afraid. Even if you find your sister, mother will not abandon you." Zhao Qingqing couldn't hold it in any longer. She let out a cry and threw herself into Mrs. Zhao's arms and started crying. Madame Zhao hugged her, her eyes were red, and Lord Zhao and the young man surrounded them and kept comforting them. The whole family hugged each other, making me feel like a complete outsider. I didn't get angry either. I just ate a snack and listened to their intermittent crying. I roughly figured out what happened. The four are Lord Zhao, Madame Zhao, their son Zhao Shu, and the fake daughter, Zhao Qingqing, who has taken over the magpie's nest. 17 years ago, the midwife who was in charge of delivering Mrs. Zhao's baby secretly replaced me with her own granddaughter and then abandoned me on the street on a snowy night. The midwife's granddaughter, Zhao Qingqing, was treated as the daughter of Lord Zhao and Madame Zhao and lived a pampered life in the Zhao family for 17 years. It was not until the midwife died while unconscious and accidentally revealed the secret that the Zhao family realized she was a fake. But I had developed a deep affection for my daughter, having raised her for 17 years. Besides, as her real daughter, I was thrown into the snow that year and would have died long ago. Therefore, Lord Zhao and Lady Zhao tried hard to comfort themselves and forget about the matter. I didn't expect to find me in the military camp in Qingzhou. I guess, when Lord Zhao saw a soldier like me, he probably hoped that he had made a mistake. But my nose and mouth look like his, and my eyebrows and features are like Mrs. Zhao. They also conducted a blood test to verify that I was indeed their biological daughter. Blood is thicker than water, and Lord Zhao and Madame Zhao finally decided to take me back home. From then on, there were two young ladies in the Zhao family, Zhao Qingqing and Zhao Mujin.
2.
I followed the instructions and quickly returned to the tent to pack my luggage. It wasn't much, just a sword, a ration bag, a suit of armor, and a few silver coins that the general gave me as a reward for my meritorious service. The brothers standing by were amazed. "I told you that wood is a woman, but you refused to believe me." I don't disbelieve it. What I mean is that no matter whether Motu is a man or a woman, she is still our brother. Tisk, I'm going to the governor's mansion to enjoy the good life now. Why would I need a brother like you? Hey, Motu is so lucky. The governor's family should make 3 dumplings a day, right? They should be filled with meat. I looked at this group of mud-legged soldiers. They also looked at me with silly smiles. Everyone had a pale face. The army was in a ration shortage this year, and everyone did not have enough food. The general went to the court to ask for food for a long time but received none. Winter is here, and everyone's blouses have holes in them, revealing the thin cotton wool, but they don't have the money to buy new ones. When the north wind blew, everyone was so cold that they shivered with their necks drawn in. Even so, when they looked at me, their faces showed genuine happiness for me. In the past 12 years, we have blocked swords and arrows for each other on the battlefield and exchanged our lives for each other. I put on my small bag and said, "Brothers, I'm leaving." They waved cheerfully. "Remember to write a letter." I got on the Zhao mansion's carriage. Inside, there was a pine green satin quilt, a silver red fuchsia embroidered cushion, a gold thread hand warmer burning silver charcoal, and an intoxicatingly warm breeze. I suddenly remembered the poem that the general had read to us. He said, "The rich have wine and meat, but the streets are full of frozen corpses." My heart moved, and I looked to the other side of the carriage. The person riding in the same car with me was Zhao Qingqing. She was wearing a gorgeous silk dress and a snow-white fox fur coat. She looked at me with some disgust and moved away. When we were alone, she was no longer the delicate girl she once was, and her hostility towards me was evident in her words. "You don't think that you can do anything just because you are a biological child, do you?" Zhao Qingqing said coldly, her voice a little sharp. "The Zhao family has been officials for generations, and they are the upper-class celebrities. How can a rough person like you be worthy of being a lady of the Zhao family?" Zhao Qingqing said a lot, and I just remained silent. It's not that I tolerate her, but in my life, arguing is really meaningless. Just like when 2 countries are at war, what can the censors on both sides do if they argue to the death? In the end, the competition is about who has the harder fist, who is stronger, and who has real soldiers in his hands. When Zhao Qingqing saw that I ignored her, she became even angrier. When she arrived at the gate of Zhao's house and was about to get off the car, she suddenly fell down. Zhao Shua, my biological brother, had just gotten off the carriage in front. When he turned around and saw the scene, he hurried over. "Qingqing, are you okay?" Zhao Qingqing's face turned pale. She covered her ankle, her almond-shaped eyes blinked, and big tears fell. Zhao Sun panicked. "Qingqing, where are you hurt? Does it hurt?" His voice quickly attracted Governor Zhao and Madame Zhao. When the whole family gathered around her, Zhao Qingqing finally spoke. She sobbed, "Just now I was about to get off the car, and I suddenly felt a force coming from behind, and I fell down." Before she finished her words, Zhao Shua was already looking at me with a frown. "Zhao Mujin, you actually pushed Qingqing? I know you've suffered a lot while living outside the mansion, and you must be resentful, but why do you have to take it out on Qingqing? Qingqing was just a baby back then, and it wasn't her who harmed you, so why are you targeting her like this?" When Zhao Shu got angry, Zhao Qingqing had already staggered forward on his knees. She grabbed the corner of Zhao Shua's robe and cried helplessly. "Brother, my sister definitely didn't mean to do that. She must have been in the military for too many years and never ridden in a carriage. She didn't know the etiquette of getting off a carriage, so she bumped into me. And it's reasonable for my sister to blame me. After all, it was my grandmother who caused my sister to live on the streets. Although I have never had any contact with this grandmother, since we are blood relatives, I should pay for the evil she has done." Zhao Qingqing cried so hard that her voice was choked and her tears flowed down. Mrs. Zhao was anxious. "Qingqing, you are not in good health. How can you stand kneeling in the snow like this? Get up quickly." Zhao Qingqing shook her head. "If my sister doesn't forgive me, Qingqing won't get up. Qingqing has to apologize to my sister." Perhaps because she was too weak, Zhao Qingqing fainted in Zhao Shu's arms before she could finish her words. Zhao Shu was so anxious that he picked up Zhao Qingqing and rushed into the mansion. Someone call the imperial physician. Mrs. Zhao followed behind in a hurry. Looking at Qingqing's pale face, she kept crying, "My poor daughter. How could God play such a trick on her and let her suffer such a great sin?" Governor Zhao looked at me with disappointment and disgust, flicked his sleeves, turned around and followed me. I was left alone. Snowflakes fell from the sky and landed silently on my shoulders. I have to say, I'm still a little sad. I have always known that I am an orphan. Now, I am suddenly found by my biological parents. Although I can see that they are not reliable, I may still have a little hope of gaining family love. Now this thought is finally gone. But I was only sad for a moment. The next moment, I caught sight of the fruits displayed in the lobby. Each one is bright red and plump, and you can tell at first glance that it is juicy. There are not many fresh fruits in a bitter and cold place like Qingzhou. This must have been delivered at full speed on the official road and was specially provided for the governor's mansion to enjoy. I asked the servant, "Can I eat it?" The servant was expecting me to cry, but unexpectedly saw this turn of events. He stammered, "Yes, yes." Me? Okay. I ate a few and secretly took a handful away. The Zhao family is really rich. It's good to have money. Everyone in the mansion rushed to Zhao Qingqing's place. I was left out, and no one noticed me. So I took advantage of the chaos to climb over the wall and sell all the fruits before the market closed. I sold it for 2 taels of silver and bought several big fat pigs. I found a horse-drawn carriage, loaded all the fat pigs onto it, and asked the coachman to take it to the barracks. After thinking about it, I felt uneasy, so I wrote a letter and asked him to take it with him. The letter said, "Brothers, it's nice to see you. When you get the pig, kill it and eat it quickly. Don't be like the sheep we caught last time. We were reluctant to eat it and ended up keeping it thinner and thinner. Don't worry, I'm here at Zhao's house. We'll have a good time from now on." 3. When Zhao Qingqing came to see me, I was thinking about how to sell the ornamental tree in the yard. This tree can provide a warm winter coat for every soldier in the camp, so they don't have to suffer from frostbite anymore. But the problem is that it is too big, and I really don't know how to transport it out of the house by myself. When Zhao Qingqing walked in, she saw me sitting alone by the tree, looking worried. She curled her lips and smiled and said with satisfaction, "How about it? Do you believe it now?" She came to my side, bent down and whispered in my ear, "You can't take away the love of my parents and brothers. I just need to use a little trick, and everything will be mine." So, what if a pigeon occupies a magpie's nest? I just hate that my grandmother was soft-hearted and didn't strangle you to death immediately. She finished speaking grimly, then smiled brightly. But it doesn't matter if you come back alive. I am still the only daughter of the Zhao family. A rough man like you is not worthy of being on the stage, so your parents left you in this remote courtyard and don't want to see you at all. I looked at her calmly and wanted to tell her that this courtyard was very nice. Because it is remote, if you lose something it will not be discovered. These days I have sold all the things that are easy to sell and saved a lot of money, which I exchanged for banknotes. Zhao Qingqing wanted to continue talking when the maid from Madame Zhao's room suddenly walked in. "The second young lady is here too." The maid saw Zhao Qingqing, bowed, and then turned to look at me. "Young lady, the 15th of this month is your birthday. Madame has prepared a banquet and invited all the famous ladies in the city to attend." Zhao Qingqing was startled, and then a hint of hostility flashed across her eyes. For the past 17 years, this birthday party has been exclusively hers. She replaced everything for me, including my birthday. But actually this day is the day I was born, and it has nothing to do with her. Fortunately, the maid turned around and said to Zhao Qingqing, "The second young lady is also attending the banquet. Madame said that from now on this day will be the birthday of the 2 young ladies." In front of Mrs. Zhao's maid, Zhao Qingqing showed a gentle smile. "Qingqing, thanks, mother." Looking back at me, Zhao Qingqing's eyes once again showed hostility. I knew she was going to use some unsavory means to torture me. Sure enough, when the banquet was about to start, I found that the skirt my wife prepared for me was torn into a big hole. Xiao Tao, the maid newly assigned to my room, was so anxious that she shed tears. "What should we do?" We don't have any other skirts to attend the banquet. Only the second young lady came this afternoon, and she must have ruined the skirt. Miss, let's go to the lady and explain everything so that she can give us another skirt. I shook my head. No need. Zhao Qingqing did this. Obviously, she was well prepared. Even if I went to complain to Mrs. Zhao, and Zhao Qingqing cried and made a fuss and pretended to be pitiful, it would be difficult for me to do anything to her. Seeing me shaking my head, Xiao Tao became even more anxious. Are you really not going to the banquet? Wouldn't that be what the second miss wants? I smiled and said, Who said you don't want to go? Just change your clothes. So, when I appeared at the banquet, I wore a long gown on top, tight-fitting trousers on the bottom, and braids around my legs. Zhao Qingqing was chatting with a group of noble ladies. When she turned around and saw me, she immediately burst out laughing. The other ladies followed her gaze and looked at me, and they also laughed. Qingqing, is this your sister? She looks like a country bumpkin in the way she's dressed. Yes, even the servants in my house are more noble than her. Qingqing, I'm not saying anything, but your sister showing up at the banquet dressed like this is really a disgrace to the Zhao family. Zhao Qingqing listened to these noble ladies' ridicule of me with a smile on her face, and, without saying a word, after she had heard enough, she walked up to me happily and said proudly, Sister, you heard it too. It's not that I mean to make things difficult for you, but everyone thinks you are being rude. As a young lady from the Zhao family, I must protect the reputation of the Zhao family. Your clothes are extremely embarrassing. You have no manners of a noble lady. Please leave the banquet immediately. I responded to her with a soldier's nonchalant smile. Zhao Qingqing was frightened by my stare and became even angrier. What are you looking at? I didn't see anything. I pointed at my ear. You, a fake Zhao family member, speak as illogically as your identity. Your voice is like the hum of a mosquito. I couldn't hear you clearly at all. I touched Zhao Qingqing's deepest pain point. She shouted, I say your clothes are extremely embarrassing. You are not worthy of attending the banquet. Get out of here immediately. Even the people in the front hall heard this. Mrs. Zhao and several other elderly ladies hurried over and asked, What happened? Zhao Qingqing pursed her lips, looking pitiful again. Mother, my sister was rude. I asked her to go back, but she refused. Before she finished her words, I took a step back and knelt on one knee. Zhao Qingqing was stunned. She didn't understand what I was doing. Noble ladies from aristocratic families would not perform this ritual. The soldiers who knew how to perform this ceremony were from the Black Armor Battalion. I said loudly, It's not that I don't want to leave, but I just can't agree with what Miss Qingqing said. Everyone has heard what Miss Qingqing said just now. She said that I look extremely embarrassed in this outfit. But do you know what this outfit is? As soon as these words were spoken, the faces of all the older people present, including Mrs. Zhao, turned pale. Mrs. Zhao laughed and tried to smooth things over. It's just a birthday party. Why are you kneeling down, Mujin? There are freshly made chestnut cakes in the kitchen. Qingqing, take your sister to try them. I didn't buy her attempt to change the subject and just interrupted her. This is the battle uniform bestowed upon the Black Armor Battalion by the late Emperor. I said loudly. Zhao Qingqing's face suddenly turned pale. All the ladies who had just laughed at me were now frozen in silence. At that time, the Black Armor Camp defeated the enemy in the Battle of Suaha and marched 3,000 miles to escort the late Emperor back to the capital. The late Emperor went up to the city tower at night to pay tribute to the souls of countless soldiers who had died. To mourn them, he personally discussed the drawings with the skilled craftsmen of the Clothing Bureau and designed new uniforms for the Black Armor Battalion. This clothing is light and warm, dust and mud resistant and unassuming, making it easy to hide. Each person has a number embroidered on their chest. If a companion dies, we will cut off his number and sew it on our own body. Everyone's eyes fell on my waist, where a row of numbers were sewn on, each representing a soldier from the Black Armor Battalion who died in battle. I have practiced martial arts for many years and passed the selection process before I was able to enter the Black Armor camp and obtain a battle suit like this. So when Miss Qingqing said that it was extremely embarrassing, I really couldn't agree with her. Before I could finish my words, Zhao Qingqing collapsed and fell to the ground. During this short period of time, a servant had gone to inform Governor Zhao, and soon Governor Zhao and Zhao Shu came hurriedly, and the young female family members retreated behind the screen to avoid them. Zhao Shu helped Zhao Qingqing up. Seeing her sweaty head, he couldn't help but feel distressed and angry. He looked at me and said, "Zhao Mujin, you are making things difficult for Qingqing again?" Before he could finish, he was interrupted by Governor Zhao. "Shut up, you rebellious son." Zhao Shu was a well-dressed young man, but Governor Zhao had been in the government for many years. He took a deep breath and said to me slowly, "Qingqing was so rude. Dad will punish her severely." Mrs. Zhao wrapped her handkerchief around her neck and said, "Yes, Mujin, Qingqing didn't mean it. Please forgive her this time. We will definitely discipline her properly afterwards." They wanted to say more when suddenly an old voice came from the crowd. "How to punish? How to discipline?" An elderly lady with silver hair and a cane walked out from behind the screen. Her eyes were majestic, without even being angry. I clearly saw that Governor Zhao and Madame Zhao shuddered. This woman was none other than the most important guest at this birthday banquet, Madame Xia. Madame Xia is the younger sister of the current Queen Mother. She was born into a very noble family. She has always been fond of military affairs rather than red clothes. When she was young, she was a brave and skilled female general, and she was proficient in using a pair of guns. Later, she married Jin Yuan Ho and had 4 sons. Her husband and 3 sons died in battle in their early years, and she raised her last child alone. This posthumous child is the current commander of our Xuanjia battalion, General Xie. I know that Lord Zhao and Madame Zhao have always wanted to establish a relationship with the Xie family. They finally invited Madame Xie to the birthday party this time, just to make Zhao Qingqing familiar to Madame Xie first, and then take the opportunity to propose a marriage between Zhao Qingqing and Xie. Zhao Qingqing is outstanding in both beauty and talent, and they are confident that they can make an excellent first impression in front of Madame Xie. However, at this moment, Madame Xie lowered her eyes and looked at Zhao Qingqing with only indifference on her face. Logically speaking, how to discipline children is Mr. Zhao's family affair, and I shouldn't interfere. But the Black Armor Camp is the hard work of my late husband. Now that second Miss Zhao is speaking rudely in front of so many people, it is difficult for me to sit back and watch. So I have to ask, how does Lord Zhao intend to punish her? Governor Zhao stroked his beard for a long time before he seemed to have made up his mind and whispered, "According to family rules, 30 strokes of the cane." Before he finished speaking, Zhao Qingqing fell to the ground. Mrs. Zhao immediately burst into tears. "Sir, Qingqing is delicate and frail, and the dragon head cane is so heavy. If you hit her 30 times, it will kill her." Zhao Shu immediately knelt down and begged for mercy. "Father, how can Qingqing, a girl, endure such suffering?" While he was pleading for Zhao Qingqing, he did not forget to glare at me angrily, as if I was the one who wanted to hit Zhao Qingqing. I didn't even look at Zhao Shua, I just rolled up my sleeves. The pull is not tight, and large areas of scars are exposed. Some were caused by knives, some were stabbed by swords, and some were burned by artillery fire. The new wounds overlapped with the old ones, which looked extremely shocking. The pampered women around him covered their eyes in fear and dared not look at all. Only the battle-hardened old lady Xie stared at my scars and sighed. Everything is self-evident. We are both women, and I can endure so much injury, so how could Zhao Qingqing not be able to withstand a few beatings? Lord Zhao has just arrived in Qingzhou, and he has 3 things to do when he takes office. Old Madame Xie said calmly, "Qingzhou is a strategic location for military strategists, and the Xuanjia camp has been guarding here for generations. I only want to remind you, don't let the soldiers down." Governor Zhao gritted his teeth and said, "Come here. Please use the family rules to beat me." The hall was in chaos, with all kinds of noises mingling. The cane hit the flesh with a dull thud. Zhao Qingqing screamed at first, then fainted. Mrs. Zhao was crying loudly. Zhao Shu was cursing something, but was slapped in the face by the Governor Zhao and kept silent. I didn't want to watch this farce of a birthday party anymore, so I turned to look out the window. Later, Governor Zhao asked someone to carry the fainted Zhao Qingqing back home, and he took Madame Zhao to Madame Xie and offered her a cup of tea. Madame Qingqing was indeed wrong this time, but she is actually a very innocent and kind girl. Please forgive her for this unintentional mistake. Madame Xie said calmly, if your daughter wants to ask for forgiveness, she should ask Miss Mu Jin, who is a soldier of the Black Armor Battalion. Why are you looking for me? Mrs. Zhao smiled apologetically. Qingqing and Mu Jin are sisters. There is no forgiveness or non-forgiveness between sisters. After Mu Jin entered the Zhao mansion, Qingqing has been taking care of her. Madame Xie nodded expressionlessly. I hope so. Governor Zhao and Madame Zhao spoke flattering words again, and even gave the needlework made by Zhao Qingqing to Madame Xie. Since ancient times, beauties have admired heroes. My Qingqing has always heard of General Xie's deeds, so she specially embroidered a handkerchief to give to Madame Xie and General Xie. After sending Madame Xie away with great courtesy, Governor Zhao and Madame Zhao turned around and saw me, and their faces finally turned cold. The Governor Zhao said angrily, how could my Zhao family produce such an unfilial daughter who roasted her own father on the fire in public? Mrs. Zhao wept and stopped. Originally, Qingqing and General Xie's marriage was a sure thing, but now, if her future in-laws have a bad impression of Qingqing because of what happened today, you, as her elder sister, will be sorry to Qingqing for the rest of your life. Zhao Shu, who had just sent Zhao Qingqing to the backyard, also came back. Now that there was no one around, he could finally yell, you are a disaster. I wish Qingqing was my biological sister. These words immediately stirred the worries of Governor Zhao and Madame Zhao. Governor Zhao sighed deeply, while Madame Zhao started to cry. Obviously, they all thought that a well-behaved and gentle girl like Zhao Qingqing should be the biological daughter of the Zhao family, and a devil like me was their doom. That night, I was grounded and had to stay in my own yard and could not go to any public places. Xiao Tao stamped her feet in anger. I thought my biological father was too much for selling me to a human trafficker, but now it seems that my father at least knows that he is bad, unlike these hypocritical people. I looked at her with pity. She is a simple-minded person and is not liked by her masters. Otherwise, she would not have been sent here to serve me. She is the only one in this house who is nice to me. But it doesn't matter. There are many people outside the house who care about me. The moonlight was beautiful that night, and a pigeon brought me letters from my brothers. They said, Mutu, we have received the pig and the chicken. We told the general that these were sent by you. The general asked us to ask if you are safe in Zhao Mansion. We asked him why he didn't ask it himself, and he just turned and walked away. It was really strange. By the way, after you left, the originally taciturn general became even more taciturn, and he always stared blankly at the little wooden monkey you gave him. I'm devastated. In fact, I had a crush on Xiezhua in the first few years after I entered the camp, and I carved a small statue of him. It was discovered when he was inspecting military affairs. He asked me, what is this? I didn't dare look at him. I lowered my head and said nonsense. Monkey. Fortunately, my carving skills are very poor, so after Xiezhuan looked at the statue for a while, he believed it. I thought he had thrown it away a long time ago, but I didn't expect he had kept it. I suddenly became emotional and took a pen and paper to write a reply. Tell the general, I want to go back, I miss everyone. Xiezhua wrote me a reply personally the next day. He said, Motu, there are so many people who want to be the daughter of the Zhao family, but cannot. God has given you this fortune, so you should take it well. I understand. Xiezhua wouldn't let me go back. I am a soldier, and I cannot refuse the general's order. All I could do was burn the letter and look out at the night sky. The Zhao mansion was beautiful, but the moonlight there was not as bright as that in the military camp. 4. After the birthday party, the already weak relationship between me and the Zhao family became even more disillusioned. Governor Zhao originally just disliked me, but now he has begun to hate me deeply. Mrs. Zhao initially had some expectations for me. her own flesh and blood, but now her balance has completely tilted towards Zhao Qingqing, with whom she has had a mother-daughter relationship for 17 years. As for Zhao Shu, he made no secret of his ill will towards me. He instructed his servants to withhold my monthly salary, feed me rotten meals, and tried every possible way to torture me, just to vent his anger for his good sister. But Zhao Qingqing couldn't get rid of her anger at all. She truly loved Xiezhua. She spent several hours dressing up elegantly on the birthday party, hoping to perform well and win the old lady's favor. But I did this to her. Now, no matter how attentive she was, old lady Xia's response was lukewarm. There was even one time when Madame Zhao brought Zhao Qingqing to visit and suggested that Zhao Qingqing come to play chess with Madame Xia often to relieve her boredom. Madame Xia said calmly, "How is Miss Mu Jin doing these days? If she's not busy, you can ask her to come and keep me company." This was a great insult to Zhao Qingqing. As soon as she got home, she threw everything down. I made so many delicious snacks, but she didn't even try them. Instead, she asked about that bitch. The maidservant beside her quickly stepped forward to comfort her. Old Madame Xia would not do this for no reason. Zhao Mujin must have bribed the old madam privately. Zhao Qingqing seemed to have been reminded. Her eyebrows tightened and her eyes became fierce. That bitch also wants to marry General Xia? She immediately threw the teacup again. She is dreaming. For a rough person like her, being a general's vanguard is already a blessing for her. Can she really want to be a general's wife? The maid worriedly said, "That rough guy is definitely not worthy, but now old Madame Xia has a good impression of her, and she is indeed the eldest daughter of the Zhao family." On the outer wall 3 feet away from them, I was using the Qinggong skills that Xiezhua taught me to cling to the wall in the manner of an upside-down golden hook. When I was in the Xuanjia camp, I was a reconnaissance scout responsible for sneaking into the enemy camp to gather information. I didn't expect that after entering the Zhao mansion, this ability would actually come in handy. Across the wall, the maid continued to help Zhao Qingqing analyze. The old man and his wife must like the second young lady, but if old lady Xia took the initiative to propose that Zhao Mujin and General Xia get engaged, the old man and his wife would probably not refuse. After all, for the old man, no matter which daughter marries into the Xia family, he will be able to rise to prominence. Zhao Mujin clenched the handkerchief tightly, almost biting her lips until they bled. "Why?" she murmured in a low voice. "I was the only daughter of the Zhao family, and I was the one who would marry Xiezhua. Why did she have to appear? In that case, don't blame me for being cruel. My grandmother was too soft-hearted and didn't strangle her to death herself, leaving this disaster behind. I must not make the same mistake now." I hung on the wall quietly, listening to Zhao Mujin and her trusted maid discussing the plan. Well, she has her plans and I have mine. Diving into the night, I looked up at the sky. The moon will be full soon. 5. Half a month later, a matchmaker suddenly came to Prince Qi's palace far away in the capital. It turned out that the king of Qi saw a portrait of Zhao Qingqing and was amazed by her beauty, so he came to propose marriage, hoping to marry Zhao Qingqing as his princess. After hearing the news, Zhao Qingqing cried so hard that she fainted on the spot and soon fell ill. The reason is simple. Prince Qi is the current emperor's uncle and is now in his 60s. Not only was he old, he was also licentious and cruel, and he took pleasure in torturing women during sex. The previous 2 queens of Qi died early, leaving the children in the mansion in chaos. "Dad, Mom, please save me." Zhao Qingqing cried bitterly on the sickbed. "The Prince Qi's mansion is a den of tigers and wolves. I'm afraid my daughter will be tortured to death within 2 years if she marries there. My life is not worth cherishing, but I have not yet repaid you for your kindness in raising me. I will not be able to rest in peace even if I die." Zhao Qingqing cried so pitifully that even Mrs. Zhao's eyes turned red. She looked at Governor Zhao and said, "Sir, do you think of a way to save Qingqing?" Governor Zhao was also confused. "Of course I want to save her, but the Prince of Qi is the uncle of the current emperor. Do you have the courage to refuse the marriage?" Zhao Qingqing started crying. My daughter asked a Taoist priest to tell her fortune a few days ago, and he said that Sister Mujin and I have incompatible fates. Sure enough, Sister Mujin has only been in the mansion for a few months, and I am about to die. Mrs. Zhao was shocked and confused. Did the Taoist really say that? Zhao Qingqing nodded with tears in her eyes. It's absolutely true. He said that the two of us are mutually exclusive and destined to only one survive. Governor Zhao had a gloomy face and said nothing, while Madame Zhao burst into tears. They were probably all feeling sad. If death was inevitable, why was Zhao Qingqing the one going to die? Seeing that the atmosphere was almost ready, Zhao Qingqing finally spoke pitifully. Actually, my daughter has thought of a way. Just let Sister Mu Jin marry for me. Governor Zhao was stunned. But the King of Qi has his eyes on you. Zhao Qingqing said quietly. The bride may not be sent to the capital, and she may die on the way. By then, the King of Qi will not travel hundreds of miles to confirm who is in the coffin. After she finished speaking, Governor Zhao and Madame Zhao both fell silent. Zhao Qingqing started crying again. I also know that this action is sending Sister Mu Jin to her death, and I feel very sorry for it. Dad, Mom, just pretend I never mentioned this method. If ona of I misti, late midi. Before she finished her words, Zhao Shu, who was standing far away, could no longer hold back. He strode forward and protected Zhao Qingqing. Father, Mother, Qingqing lived with us for 17 years and was our closest relative. How could you watch her die? As for Zhao Mujin, she was originally a peasant soldier. If you hadn't taken her back to the Zhao mansion, she would have died on the battlefield sooner or later. Now she can enjoy a life of luxury for a few months before dying. This is already a blessing for her. Governor Zhao and Madame Zhao remained silent for a long time. But in the end, they made a decision. On the second evening, Mrs. Zhao and Zhao Qingqing came to my room. Mrs. Zhao kindly handed me a bowl of bird's nest and said, I made it myself and added a lot of rock sugar. Mujin, please try it. I resisted. I don't like eating this sticky stuff. Zhao Qingqing gently advised, Sister, this is top-grade blood swallows. We only have 2 tails of it in our house. Mother cooked it especially for you. Even I don't have a share. If you don't eat it, wouldn't it be a waste of Mother's kindness? We are a family. We have had some unpleasant experiences before, but they are all in the past. This bird's nest is to tell my sister that you will always be the eldest daughter of the Zhao family. When someone is needed to die, I remember that I am the daughter of the Zhao family. I sneered in my heart, but took the bird's nest and drank it all in one gulp. Immediately, the porcelain cup fell from my hand, hit the ground and broke into countless pieces. I fell weakly on the couch and looked up with great effort. What did you put in here? Mrs. Zhao stood up and covered her face, saying, Qingqing, you can handle the rest. Mother is a Buddhist and cannot bear to see this. She turned around and left in a hurry, leaving only Zhao Qingqing and I in a room. Zhao Qingqing looked at me, who was completely exhausted, and smiled slowly. This was her proudest moment. Soon, I would be completely eliminated. She was the only lady in the Zhao family, and no one would compete with her for her. So she boldly tore off that delicate exterior and revealed her cruel fangs. What do you think, sis? Like I said, you can't beat me. In terms of scheming and tactics, you, a soldier, are no match for a noble lady like me who has been brought up since childhood. She clapped her hands, and 2 big men came in and started tying me up with a rope. Outside is the carriage prepared for you. But don't worry, you won't have the chance to become the Princess of Qi. After all, if the King of Qi finds out that the goods are not the same as the ones in the picture, he will definitely blame the Zhao family. So you will die of the plague on the way. The rope was tied from my legs all the way up, and I raised my head with difficulty to look at Zhao Qingqing. It was you who sent your portrait to Prince Qi's palace, right? You deliberately let the King of Qi take a fancy to you, and then hired a Taoist priest to create a hexagram that our fates conflicted, and only one of us could survive. You're betting that your parents are partial and will sacrifice me to save you. Zhao Qingqing raised the corners of her lips. At this moment, she was a little too proud of herself. There's no way. She is too intoxicated by her own methods. Yes, nothing ventured, nothing gained. How can I kill you with one strike without putting myself in danger first? Now you understand, don't you? You can't take away the love my parents and brothers have for me. At the critical moment, they gave up on you, their own daughter, and chose to save me. Zhao Qingqing left with great satisfaction. Suddenly, she stopped. Something seemed wrong. In a flash, she suddenly realized it. Wait, haven't you been under house arrest? Who told you that King Qi wanted to marry me? Zhao Qingqing turned around suddenly. She was too proud just now, and now she finally realized that something was wrong. Whether it was the Prince of Qi proposing to marry me or the Taoist fortune teller, no one should have informed me of this news. But I know it all. In other words, I actually knew her plan all along. Zhao Qingqing finally came to her senses. But it was too late. Behind her, two big men had already fallen. Their big muscular bodies only looked intimidating, but in actual combat they were no match for a warrior like me who lives on the tip of a knife. Zhao Qingqing wanted to scream, but no sound came out. Because the next moment, I had already flashed in front of her and grabbed her neck hard. Ms. Zhao Heir, I admit that you might be an expert at domestic fighting. But you know what? I smiled slightly. The most brilliant things in the world are often blatant schemes. With a little force on my hands, I threw Zhao Qingqing, who had been knocked unconscious by me, aside. There was a faint noise coming from outside the door. It seemed that Governor Zhao and Madame Zhao felt something was wrong and were hurrying over. They are late. I turned and rushed to the window and tore off the skirt that was in the way, revealing my tight military uniform. I threw myself into the boundless night outside the window. There was no moon tonight. The inky night enveloped my figure as I flew across the roofs of the Zhao mansion. Outside the palace, there were tall and strong horses that had been harnessed, and each horse was pulling a carriage. This is the dowry convoy. They were going to send me to marry in the capital tonight. I kicked the driver off, sat on the lead horse, and raised the whip. Drive? The steed leaped out, and the team of horses behind it started running together. The wheels of the carriage rolled over the bluestone road, which was filled with countless gold, silver, jewelry, antiques, and curios. That was the betrothal gift from Prince Qi and the dowry from the Zhao family. After all, it was a daughter being married to Prince Qi's family, so the dowry would always look good. Now, I took this vehicle straight to the military camp. Thank you, Governor Zhao and his family, for providing supplies for the Black Armor camp. The moon emerged from behind the clouds, and the horses galloped in the moonlight. I made it all the way to the barracks. The Black Armor camp was lining up, and Xie was counting the troops. It turns out that tonight is the day for battle. The Xuanjia camp was Xie's trusted confidant, and he personally named them. Wu Jiro. Exist. Pei Daqing. Exist. Lu guards the city. Exist. After a long roll call, Xie finally found me standing at the end of the line. I was a little nervous. Xie asked me to stay in the Zhao mansion as the eldest daughter, but I came back. This was the first time I disobeyed his order. Under the moonlight, he looked at me and I looked at him. There was silence. After a long while, Xie said in a clear voice, "Wood." Tears suddenly welled up in my eyes. I took a step forward and said loudly, "Exist." In front of me, the brothers looked at me with smiles. My eyes slid across their dark faces. The one on the far left is Lu Xiaocai. He didn't pass the exam to become a scholar, but because he was the most educated person in the barracks, we all called him that. He was also the first one to realize that I was a woman. After realizing it, he didn't say anything but just asked his wife to take care of me more. The one next to him with the most innocent smile was Wu Erling. Wu Erling had never been to school, but he was very good at using a knife. The black iron knife in his hand had been passed down for 3 generations. His father passed it to his eldest brother after he died in the war, and then to him after his eldest brother died. Before every battle, Wu Erling would worship the sword. He said, "Dad and brothers, if you are still alive, there is no need for you to bless me. I am alone anyway, so at most I can reunite with you, but you should take care of my brothers who have families." Whenever Wu Erling said this, Pei Daqing would scold him, and then he would start to cry. We all know that Pei Daqing has a sweetheart. The woman is very old, but she's been waiting for him to go back and propose marriage. Pei Daqing asked Liu Xiaozai to write a letter for him, asking the woman to marry someone else and not ruin her life. The woman replied saying that she would wait for Pei Daqing for another year. Year after year, the woman has not married until today. There are also Yu Xiaohu, Meng Donghua. Finally, I looked at Xiezhua. His black hair was tied up high, his eyes were like stars, and he looked vaguely the same as the night we first met. That night I was stealing on the street and stole from him. His servants wanted to beat me, but he stopped them and asked me, "Why did you steal?" I said, "I'm so hungry." He bought me some hot buns and left. I followed him all the way. Xiezhua thought I was dissatisfied, so he took off his wallet and gave it to me. "This should be enough to buy buns for many days." I said, "I don't want the buns. Let me follow you. I can fight and I'm very good at it." He asked me, "Why do you want to follow me?" I said, "Because I heard you call your servants brothers. I want to be your brother, too." I admit that I lied to Xiezhua. When the young general, as cold as the moon, lowered his eyes and looked at me, my heart actually skipped a beat. If I were a rich lady, this scene would be love at first sight. But at that time I was just a street thug. But it doesn't matter. For so many years, we have exchanged our lives for each other, and we have depended on each other for life and death. Each of them is my brother and my closest family. Now I am finally home. That night, the Chong and Rong tribes invaded, and the Black Armor camp rushed to meet the enemy. The commander was Xiezhua, the son of Marquis Jin Yuan and the last remaining loyal member of the Xie family. This young general, who was only 22 years old, took the military token left by his deceased father, wore the armor left by his deceased brother, bid farewell to his loving mother, rode a black precious horse, and rushed to the vast battlefield. He is not alone, for we, his brothers, are following behind him. The flags are flying. The night is scary, but we sing loudly. How can you say I have no clothes? I share my clothes with you. When the king raises his army, I will sharpen my spears and halberds. I share the same hatred with you. How can you say I have no clothes? I am with you in the same marsh. When the king is about to raise an army, I will sharpen my spears and halberds. I will work with you. How can you say I have no clothes? I will share my clothes with you. When the king raises his army, I will prepare my armor and weapons. I will go with you. 6. According to historical records, in the early spring of the 22nd year of the Yuanshi reign, Xiezhua, the Marquis of Jinyuan, led his troops to defeat the Chong and Rong tribes. In this battle, Zhao Mujin, the eldest daughter of the Zhao family, followed the army and made great achievements. She was promoted to general and then to deputy general. Everyone said that after Old Lady Xie, our dynasty finally had another hero who was as outstanding as the others. After the great victory in the battle and the defeat of the Chong and Rong tribes, a major event also occurred in the capital city. After the emperor passed away, the Empress Dowager helped the 3-year-old prince to ascend the throne, becoming the Grand Empress Dowager and ruling the country from behind the curtain. When the Empress Dowager heard about my achievements, she specially sent Yushi to Qingzhou to invite me to the capital to be rewarded. The Zhao family held a grand banquet to entertain Yushi. Yes, after I made great achievements in the war, the Zhao family began to be proud of me as their daughter. Governor Zhao and Madame Zhao welcomed me into the Zhao mansion with smiles on their faces, as if everything that had happened before had never happened. Even Zhao Xu stayed by my side in a friendly way, praising my military exploits from time to time with all kinds of nonsense poems. I asked him, "Where is Zhao Qingqing?" Zhao Shua's smile faltered, but he immediately adjusted his expression. Qingqing is now married into the Qiwang mansion as a concubine, and she and the Qiwang are in love with each other. I understand. Zhao Qingqing played with fire and got burned, and ended up losing money. And I, who returned with merit, became the Zhao family's greatest reliance. Mrs. Zhao held me in tears and said, "I am relieved that you can return safely. Swords and knives are merciless on the battlefield. I am really worried that something bad will happen to you." I don't speak. I did return safely, but many of my brothers died on the battlefield. Many of them did not have to die. If only our weapons were better and our artillery firepower was more sufficient. Even if the food on weekdays was better and the medical supplies in the barracks were more sufficient. But for the past decade or so, we had no money. Siejua had been using his own money to subsidize the army's rations, but it was never enough. I looked around the Zhao mansion. Qingzhou was a bitterly cold place, but here, with its pavilions, terraces, towers, small bridges, and flowing water, it was just like the south of the Yangtze River. It is said that the stones used to build the garden were transported from Taihu Lake at great expense. Next to him, the servant announced the menu for the evening treat for Yushur: braised shark's fin, stir-fried pheasant tongue, cherry meat. Buddha jumps over the wall. The Zhao family members gathered around me and told me diligently how precious these ingredients were and how much effort they put into preparing them for my welcoming banquet. And I just touched my suit. There were many more brothers' numbers on their waists. I said, "Let's have dinner when we are ready. It's time to meet Master Yushur." 7. That night, the banquet started as scheduled. Yushur and I sat at the upper seats, and exquisite dishes were served one after another. There were also silk and bamboo singing and dancing in the lobby. Maids in long gauze skirts danced gracefully, with gold threads floating on their sleeves like ripples. I drank glass after glass of wine. With every drink I took, I remembered the name of a brother who had passed away. When I finished reading out the names of all the brothers, the sound of stringed instruments coincided with the end of a song, and the dancers left the stage gracefully. I poured all the wine in the jug onto the ground to pay tribute to the souls of the fallen, then stood up and applauded. Warriors are half dead in battle, while beauties are still singing and dancing in their tents. I said loudly. Just like a sharp sword suddenly shattering the peaceful singing and dancing, the room suddenly became quiet. The musicians looked at each other and the dancers retreated in panic. Mrs. Zhao stood up and said, "Mujin, you are drunk." I shook my head, my eyes clear. "No, I know exactly what I'm talking about. Lord Yushur, you came from the capital. I would like to ask, how much military funds does the capital allocate to Qingzhou every year?" Yushur said, "It was 15,000 taels before, and it rose to 17,000 taels last year." I nodded. 17,000 taels. 17,000 taels of snowflake-patterned silver, but the soldiers of the Black Armor Battalion still can't eat enough and wear warm clothes. Where did the money go? I smiled and pointed around. Look at this magnificent governor's mansion. Look at the jewels and jades displayed in this house. Look at this extremely luxurious banquet. Lord Yushur, do you have an answer? Silence. There was a long silence. Governor Zhao stood up and pointed at me with a shaking hand. "Zhao Mujin, you are crazy. What are you talking about? I'm exposing the Zhao family's corruption." I responded louder than him. With 3 high fives, Xiao Dao, who was hiding in the dark, came out with a thick stack of account books and came to my side. I held up the account book. "This is the annual expenditure of the Zhao family. How much is Mr. Zhao's annual salary? How much is the harvest from Mrs. Zhao's family's farm and shop? All this money can only support 1/3 of this huge expenditure. So, where does the remaining 2/3 come from? It's military expenses, money obtained by sucking the blood of countless soldiers. While we are trying to defend our territory by shedding blood on the battlefield, there are termites like this in the court corroding the beams."
Yushur looked at me.
He was silent for a long time and then said, "General Zhao, have you ever thought about this? If the crime of corruption is proven, the Zhao family may be exterminated. You are one of the 9 clans." I laughed. "Does Master Yushur have any family?" Yushur was silent for a moment. "Of course I do. I have parents, brothers, a wife, and 3 children. If they were in danger now, they would die, and Master Yushur's life could be exchanged for the lives of all of them. Master Yushur, are you willing?" Yu Shi whispered, "Yes." I smiled softly and said, "I would like to, too. Xuanjia camp is my home. Taking some money from the Zhao government and giving it to the military camp is only a temporary solution and does not address the root cause. As long as corrupt officials remain, the warriors will suffer forever. If my blood can bring health to my real family, I am willing to do it." Yu Shi looked at me deeply. He understood. He took out the token of the Empress Dowager and planned to exercise the power of the governor. However, at the same moment, Lord Zhao stood up, and with a command, all the guards of the Zhao mansion surrounded him. They held bows and crossbows, aiming at Yu Shi and me standing in the center. Yu Shi was shocked. "Zhao Dongji, how much have you embezzled? That's why you want to kill the court historians and meritorious officials directly, to silence them?" Governor Zhao said gloomily, "Sir, don't blame me. If you want to blame someone, blame your unfilial son who got you into trouble." He waved his hand, and his guards raised their bows and crossbows, ready to fire. But the next moment, there was a loud noise outside, as if iron hooves were crushing the ground. The servant stumbled in and said, "Oh no, it's the Black Armor Camp." I smiled at the panicked Yu Shi and said, I had expected that Zhao Dongji might become desperate, so I asked the Black Armor Camp to guard outside in advance. Before he finished speaking, a young general in a black robe came in with a sword in hand. He looked at me. I looked at him. After a while, I smiled with tears in my eyes. "Siejua, I'm going to the capital. If I don't come back, you have to take good care of my little wooden monkey." 8. In the spring of the second year of Jianzhao, a bloody change took place in the court, starting with the Zhao family of Qingzhou. Countless corrupt officials were arrested. Some lost their black silk hats, and some lost their heads. As expected, all 9 clans of the Zhao family were implicated. As the biological daughter of Governor Zhao and Madame Zhao, I naturally bore the brunt of the consequences. The Xuanjia camp wrote a letter in blood to plead for me. Siejua entered the palace in person. The proud general knelt outside the palace for 10 hours, with heavy snow falling all over his armor. Finally, the Empress Dowager came out holding the little emperor's hand. She lowered her eyes and asked Siejua, "Are you pleading for your soldiers, or for your beloved?" Siejua pondered. He said, "I have known Zhao Mujin for more than 12 years. 5 years ago, during the battle at Zuhealing, I was seriously injured and unconscious. It was Zhao Mujin who carried me out of the snow. She was injured, too, and blood flowed from our respective wounds, dripping into the snow and melting together. She was afraid that I would fall asleep, so she asked me to sing with her." Siejua sang softly, "How can I say I have no clothes? I will share my robe with you." The song echoed within the silent palace walls. The Empress Dowager suddenly laughed. She said, "Yuer also loves to sing this song. You and your mother are really alike." Yuer is the nickname of Mrs. Xie. My sister has raised a wonderful child. This wonderful child became a general 20 years later and trained a group of excellent soldiers for our dynasty. The Empress Dowager said in a clear voice, "Fighting on the battlefield, guarding the territory, clearing up the government and the people, and severely punishing corrupt officials are loyalty. Regarding Xuanjiang as your home, you would rather risk the world's disapproval than seek happiness for your family. This is filial piety. Zhao Mujin is both loyal and filial. He has done nothing wrong and deserves to be rewarded." Some censors came out and spoke out. "The Queen Mother, please think again. This is against the rules." The Empress Dowager shook her head. "The world should be ruled by people, not by rules." Just like that, I was pardoned and ordered to return to the Black Armor Camp to serve as Siejua's deputy general to guard Qingzhou. 9. Then many things happened. Lord Zhao and Zhao Shu were beheaded, and Madame Zhao was enslaved. Zhao Qingqing had been ill for a long time in Prince Qi's mansion. Upon hearing the bad news, he vomited blood and died. Siejua brought me this news. In the boundless snowy land at the frontier, we didn't say a word. We just sat side by side and looked at the moon quietly. He knew that I had exchanged my life for his on the battlefield. I also know that he knelt outside the palace for a long time to plead for me. But we didn't speak. After 12 years of fighting side by side, we have already understood each other with just a look or a gesture. So when it comes time to actually speak up, we all seem clumsy. After a long while, Siege said softly, "That little wooden monkey is a bit old. Can you carve a new one?" I laughed. "Okay, I'll carve it better this time."
10.
In the distance, the camp's cooking fires were rising. Mr. Liu's wife came to visit him with their daughter in her arms. The little girl, as cute as a snowball, hugged Wu Erlang and called him second uncle. Wu Erlang happily held her on his neck and swung her around. She bumped into Pei Dacheng accidentally. The woman next to Pei Dacheng smiled and took out candy and gave it to the little girl. She was the sweetheart who had been waiting for Pei Dacheng for many years, and now she was Pei Dacheng's wife. Meng Donghua ran over holding a book on military strategy, wanting to ask Siejua for advice, but Yu Xiaohu and a few of his brothers stopped him and made faces at him to wait a while. They all looked towards me and Siejua. The setting sun falls like a tide, and everyone's smile is painted with the warmest color. 11. We never had to say we loved each other. Because love is already between heaven and earth. Over.